All right, here we go. We are on what are we on? Day 4? Yeah, I can't even count anymore. We're on day 4, and we've been through an interwoven journey at this point of, I feel like everything's so connected, but like it takes you to different, areas that you may want to explore and then bring them all back together and then go out and in. And I just feel like there's this word I learned in my yoga training, and it's called spanda. And it's basically like the idea of like energy moving in and out and in and out, and how it's always vibrating and always moving. And it just feels like this is kind of like has a spanda to it, and it's you can go in and out, and it just has like this vibration. So today Tarika Tari is going to be taking us on a journey of soul reclamation. Now, you did your training with me, I want to say it was 2020. I think it was
2021, actually.
Okay, 2021. Yeah. Okay.
2021, so, yeah.
A while ago, and you were my first scholarship student. And when you messaged me, I know, like literally you messaged me, you found me on Pinterest, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and you had messaged me, and I opened up that scholarship that time, and I had so many people flood in, and you were one of my first people to write in, and I was like, this is the person. And I had to be so like, I had to not jump the gun, and I had to like take my time, but like I knew instantly it was you that was meant to go on this journey with me. And it was so hard to not, just right away be like, yep, it's you, like, come on in, and, wait for all the other applications to come in. So what a wild ride that we've ended up here together. And I know we've lived many lives together, many incarnations. Oh my God.
Yes, it's been incredible.
It has. So, okay. Starting off with the question I've asked everyone so far, what was your biggest discovery in It's Karmic?
It's such a hard one. I've seen you ask that question to everyone, and I've thought to myself, how am I going to answer this? But I think of all the things that have come my way through this, the biggest takeaway for me is It's Karmic, and Karmic Astrology has given me a connection to myself that I never had. And, we often hear this and say this to ourselves, but I really went through the process of feeling this and knowing this, that the relationship you have with yourself is the most important relationship you can have. And when I found my chart through Karmic Astrology, because I've delved into astrology before, but Karmic Astrology is a whole other ballgame. And when I did that, and I was able to really hone in and see aspects of myself that were hidden in the dark, and in places I just was too afraid to look, didn't want to uncover, didn't want to go there. But when I was able to do that with you through this work, I met myself in a way that I've never been able to do before. And I just developed a sense of compassion for myself. That opened up a whole portal, a whole doorway towards self-acceptance. And for me, self-acceptance has been my journey into self-love. And that has been the greatest gift with me, moving through Karmic Astrology and doing this work with you. And that ties into very much what I'm going to be talking about today with soul reclamation and journeying into greater self-acceptance and self-love. But it's been coming back home to myself and having that relationship with myself.
Oh my gosh. And I got to like witness that, and I'm still witnessing it, but really when we were in the container, you'd send me these like big downloads that were my favorite to read, of everything you were discovering, and these little pieces of you that you were really a really good case study for me, especially like early on, to solidify everything I had been downloading. A lot with you, I was like, okay, I'm on the right track. This is all truth, because your chart really indicated so much of what was coming through for me at the time. So that was so beautiful.
Yeah, and another thing I'll add, and I think I remember saying this to you in the downloads as they were kind of coming through the course, was as I was learning Karmic Astrology, it actually became more of a remembrance for me. It was wild. I'd had many lifetimes, I think, of either working with you or doing this work, really teaching astrology and understanding the nuances and the language of the universe and the soul through the cosmos, you know, and it really felt like I was meeting my guides through the cosmos. You know, each planet and house and sign, they were really speaking to me and through me. And I was fully channeling these messages. I remember I was sending them to you frantically, like, what is going on? This is wild. So that has all flowed into the work I do now, my clients, and what I'll be speaking about today.
Yeah. And I love that, because that's exactly how I felt when I started studying. It was just a remembrance. And so I think there's just this intertanglement of you and I doing this work lifetime after lifetime, probably switching roles back and forth of who's the teacher, who's the mentor, who's, you know, and then just, you know, rising together. So I love this so much. And I'm so excited to hear where you take us today, because I know this is your mastery. So I'm just going to give you the floor, and I'm going to let you present and share. And I'm here for when, you know, we need to get into conversation again, but like, you just take it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Okay. So let me share my screen and we will get going. So is that clear? Can you see everything?
Got it.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you, first of all, for having me here on this summit. I'm honored to be part of the conversation. Let's just dive right in to things. So as you know, I'm going to be talking to you guys through soul reclamation and journeying into wholeness and becoming your golden self through karmic astrology. And I'll be explaining more about what soul reclamation means, what's your golden self, and how it all kind of comes together with karmic astrology. Sorry. Laptop's decided to freeze on me as it does. Okay, so my intention today, I want to take you on a journey. I want to take you on a journey through my own experience with karmic astrology, but I also want to share the 3 key ways that I learned how to reclaim pieces of my soul and journey into my wholeness using karmic astrology. Hopefully you guys come away feeling a little more ease and peace within yourself, knowing that you are meant to have the karmic soul signature that you do. And this is key. And the way I've started to look at this through reading my clients' charts, through reading my own chart and my own learnings in karmic astrology, is every aspect of your natal chart is a note in your unique composition of music. It's up to you to fine tune each note, playing even the toughest ones in its highest expression to form the most beautiful music that only you can play. And I think that's really key, because there are so many keys and codes within the chart, and these karmic placements are not there to terrorize us or to keep us feeling stuck and small. There is treasure, there are keys, there are codes, there is amazing nuggets of wisdom within all of those aspects of your chart, even the most toughest ones. So, skip a step. So that brings me on to what karmic astrology gave me. And this really speaks to why I love it so much. It really is a tool for you to be able to look deep within your own soul and learn where you've been many times before. And when you can do that, and you can start to understand, okay, what are my karmic imprints? You know, what are my karmic lessons here? Where are the lifetimes where I've repeated many times of being in the same energy signatures, either playing it safe, playing it too small, staying too comfortable? And what have I come here to do differently this time? So this means really owning your shadows. And one of the things I had to realize through my own healing journey is I'm not broken. I'm not here to put these pieces of myself back together because I'm a broken mess. I am actually here to reclaim aspects of myself that are already there. So when you start to look at your natal chart, you'll understand that, oh my gosh, there are pieces of me that maybe you didn't even know existed. You didn't know were speaking to you because you were unconscious to them. And that's what your shadows are. They're just pieces of yourself, pieces of your soul you haven't quite seen yet. And another thing I love about karmic astrology is you already come into this lifetime as a soul with treasure. You know, when we're looking at karmic astrology and our past lives, sometimes we think that we're only bringing in the bad stuff or the challenging stuff, let's say, but that's not true. The fact that you've done things many, many, many lifetimes before means you have become somewhat of an expert. You know what you're doing. If something has been a pain point for you, you've also learned how to, in some sense of the word, master that energy. You've learned how to become comfortable in that energy. And I'll speak on that a little bit more because there are placements in the birth chart, specifically say the South Node, that is our comfort zone. And so another thing that I think I've really found through this, and I mentioned it earlier today, is a greater sense of self. It's been profound for my own inner healing and my journey with connecting with myself. It's given me greater sense of peace. It's been amazing for my mental health, just the connection I have with my mind, my own inner voice, my inner critics. And it's given me an ability to be in this world with greater self-acceptance. And I really think that that is so important, because the more you are at home with yourself, the more you are able to be in this world accepting others, shining a light by just being yourself. And of course, the connection we have with ourselves is a mirror to the relationships that we then have in our external reality. So for me, it's really been the greatest gift of self-love. So moving on to karmic astrology specifically, this is deep soul work. This is the deepest soul work that you can do. And I know, Vika, you attest to this all the time. You know, this is not for the faint of heart. This is for those that really want to delve into who they are. And of course, when you're looking at the soul, you're looking at the inner self. You're looking at the subconscious, and that is the soul. And of course, what is going on internally is then reflected outwardly in your external reality. It is a mirror to all of the experiences you have. And you know, so often we can sometimes waste our time trying to change our external reality, trying to change other people, trying to change our relationships, trying to change all the circumstances that we seem so stuck in, when really what we need to be doing is shining a light into who we are, who we've been, who we've come to be and come to step into, and really remembering who you are on that soul level. And that's what karmic astrology does. It gives you a window into remembering your soul. And one of the things I will say is, and I went through this in my own healing journey, you know, some of the toughest things that we can go through in life, yes, they can be external traumas, but one of the biggest internal traumas is the judgments we have towards ourselves, the way we treat ourselves, you know, the voices within us that run rampant in our minds, in that conscious, that play on loop. And you might be wondering, you know, where does this fear come from? This doesn't come from my childhood. This doesn't come from something I've experienced in this lifetime. It's karmic. And when I say it's karmic, that means it's coming from a past life. It's coming from a past trauma. It's coming from a past wound. And when we start to shine a light on the soul and looking at the soul map, the karmic soul blueprint, we can start to realize where we have been giving so much of our power away to seek the love, the acceptance, the validation, the approval that we want from the outside world. And yet the journey that we've been on many, 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 many lifetimes before is to reclaim loving ourselves, accepting ourselves, needing no one else's validation or approval, but your own. And so how can you start to listen to yourself? Where do you begin? How do you start to know who you are? And for me, that step was through karmic astrology. through learning about my karmic imprints and karmic placements in my natal chart. And that is how you begin to know thyself. So I want to talk a little bit about the nature of the soul, because through this, I'm going to take you on a journey of the soul and wholeness and reclamation. But if you're not familiar with some of these these theories, let's say, I just wanted to talk on that a little bit. So when I talk about your wholeness, I'm referring to your higher self, your spirit. And when we talk about that, it is your infinite nature. It's pure beingness. It's at the back of everything and within everything. This is source energy that moves through you. It only knows wholeness, doesn't know anything else. It just is. It's universal energy. Now, when I'm referring to the soul, I'm referring to something that is personal. I'm referring to a spiritual identity. It's everything that you've been and the potential of who you could be. And this dwells in your subconscious. And if you are unconscious to the programming that is taking place in your subconscious from previous lifetimes and this lifetime and ancestrally and generationally, then you're going to be running on a loop, right? And one of the interesting things that I learned through Karmic Astrology is the subconscious mind is actually mirrored through the heavens. It's mirrored through the cosmos. And one of the quotes I love and I live by is, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. And so when you begin to understand the nuances and languages of the soul, you begin to understand the way the universe works. You can then start to have that sort of mirroring and understanding of what's going on within you is mirrored out. And so vice versa, it can be a guide for you to maneuver this lifetime, to maneuver this soul journey that you're on. And as you do, you'll start to change your internal, so as within, so without, as above, so below. And so with this work, what I really want to talk about is the fact that your soul wants to arrive home daily. Now, what do I mean by that? So Vika, on the first day, you touched upon the fact that we are reincarnating every single day. And I really loved that because it's a life and death process of grieving who you were and becoming more of who you are, right? And becoming more of that soul self. And this work with soul reclamation is not necessarily about changing anything, not necessarily fixing anything because you're broken. It is honestly about taking a look at everything you've got going on in your chart, in your blueprint, and arriving home to yourself and saying, and that's okay. I may have some deep, dark shit going on in my karmic blueprint. I may have been to some dark places. I may have some energy points that speak to me that are just complete chaos at times, and that's okay. So you are continuously coming home to your heart, to yourself, with a little bit more acceptance of what is. And that's the only way that change can occur. That's the only way you're going to really be able to use the pain to turn it into power, create that space, and then move into that higher self, embodying more of who you came here to be. You first need to accept that it's all okay, all of it. This is alchemy. So one of the ways I really like to approach Karmic Astrology, specifically soul reclamation work, is with a bit more curiosity. And I love that Laurie yesterday mentioned this. Just having that sense of curiosity to say, okay, I'm going through a pattern here, a pattern that is karmic. I've done this many times before, but what is my soul assignment here? And I love that. I love approaching inner healing work from that lens. There is an assignment that your soul has signed up for. There is something through this pain that you are to alchemize. There is a transformation that wants to take place. Your soul agreed to this. So when I ask the questions of, okay, what is my soul trying to teach me that I haven't yet mastered? I can go from being reactive to pausing and being responsive. And that's really key, because I think then when you start to look at your chart and you can ask yourself, okay, how have I usually responded to something like this? And then when you start to look at those karmic placements, they will specifically tell you how they want you to respond going forward by you tapping into their highest expression. The lowest expression is how you've usually done it. That's come and gone. That's the comfort zone. That's where you're staying stuck. The highest expression of that karmic placement is how you're able to respond differently. So I hope that lands and is making a little bit of sense. So how do we begin to take the journey then towards soul reclamation? This is what we're here to do. So I've narrowed this down into 3 simple steps, which, this is the work that you do, Vika, and this is the work that we've done together in It's Karmic. You start to look at your karmic blueprint. You look at your natal birth chart and you start to understand the karmic energy signatures and placements that you have. When you begin to understand the way that those energies are talking to you, and think of them, like I said, as musical notes. There's a lower octave and there's a higher octave. In its lower octave, it's the shadow. It's where you've stayed stuck. It's where the trauma exists. But in the higher octave, the highest expression, there is another way of using that energy to empower yourself. This is where your soul wants to evolve and liberate from the suffering of the past into the potential of your present moment. Just let that one land. So this is where you can begin to really learn, heal, and master your karmic energy signatures and placements. They're not here to keep you stuck or to be in a place of feeling doom and gloom. They're actually here to have your soul evolve and be liberated. Once you start to understand how to tap into those higher expressions of your karmic energy signatures and placements, you can then embody them. You're bringing them out of the dark and into the light, right? You're integrating them by turning that pain into your power, and it's now become a treasure, something that you can use, right? And so this is how we begin to bring in these darker aspects of the self into the light and really alchemize that coal into gold. And this is why I talk about becoming more of your golden self, right? You're reclaiming pieces of you that were always there, but not necessarily utilized for their highest and best. So I'll give you an example. In my chart, I have Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune in my 5th house of creativity and self-expression. And I'll say this, as a Leo sun and a Leo rising, embodying my inner sun has not been easy for me. And you would think it would be as a sun and a rising, I would just know that energy so well. But I have a lot of tough karmic placements in my chart. And these 3 specifically in my 5th house, which is that Leo energy. It's play, it's the inner child, it's creativity, it's self-expression. For the longest time, all I wanted to do was to just express my joy. I just wanted to allow that inner child to speak through sometimes the weirdest and wackiest things and the weirdest and wackiest ways. And I just couldn't for the life of me get to a place where I could just let go and just simply say yes to my joy. And it was stifling. It's so debilitating when you deny yourself something that your soul actually came here to do. You end up in a job that you despise. You end up being who you think you should be. You end up playing small, you keep your magic in, you dim your light. And for me, Saturn being, that taskmaster, being in my 5th house, it was running unconsciously, in my life. It was running on loop. It was basically an energy that was telling me it was not okay to be in my joy unless it brought me monetary gain. It's not worth my time unless it was, something I was making a career out of, or it's something that I could seek validation or approval from others for. It wasn't good enough that, I wanted to be in my joy and that was simply it. That just didn't seem to make sense to me. And so, we keep all of these things in, we don't let them out. Because for me, Saturn felt very restrictive in this house, in this placement. And Uranus here made me feel like if I expressed myself in my creativity, in my joy, I'd be ridiculed. I would be shamed. And that's because Uranus wants to do things differently. It's the innovator of the zodiac. It can be seen as a bit of an alien, a wild card of the zodiac. In its lowest expression, it can make you feel like you're a freak, that you don't belong, that you don't fit in, that there's something wrong with you in the way that you want to do things. When I started to look at my chart and I realized, oh my gosh, the highest expression of Uranus is an innovator. It wants to tear down the old and build new. It wants to be different. It wants to be unique. There's nothing wrong in that. I'm not a freak. If my joy and my self-expression comes from esoteric wisdom or spirituality or the occult or mysticism, and my joy doesn't have to look like everyone else's. Maybe reading tarot is something that is the most fun for me, and yet it doesn't need to be a business. So by shining a light on all of these parts of myself that were, unconscious to me, and running on loop, I finally gave myself the permission I needed to be exactly who I came here to be. And instead of dreaming a dream and being in this illusionary world, like Neptune can sometimes take us into that dream state, and it's better to have the dream but not create it. I decided that by reclaiming these parts of myself, I was going to afford myself the opportunity to do it differently this time. There was a reason why my soul chose these placements. And there's magic there. So this brings me on to the journey of soul reclamation work. So I've broken this down into 3 key aspects. And, this was so intuitive for me, Vika. This wasn't something you taught in It's Karmic. This is just what came through for me. And this is the magic I just really want to share with people, because I didn't know. I didn't know that if I did this work, I would be reclaiming parts of myself through shadow work, self-acceptance work, and then becoming the wholeness that I already am. Right? And this is the point, is the soul is reclaiming parts of itself, but the spirit is already whole. So if I could shine a light on those shadows by understanding my core karmic wounds, and there are 5, which are abandonment, rejection, humiliation, injustice, betrayal, they are all encoded, by the way, in your past life traumas, in your karmic imprints, in your karmic life lessons. They are encoded in your karmic placements. If I could do that, I could understand why these reoccurring patterns are coming up time and time again, not just in this lifetime, but while my soul, just for the life of me, I do not know, wants to break free from these karmic placements where all of my fears have been contained. If I could get a handle on that and start accepting who I came here to be, maybe, just maybe, if anything, I could bring in some peace, I can bring in some harmony, and I can bring in some self-awareness to start that healing journey. And that's what I've been able to do. Now, it's not obviously a one quick fix thing. It doesn't just happen. As soon as you know your karmic placements, that's it, I'm healed. It's not linear. This is a process. And that's why I've called it a journey, because it's continuous. But it gets easier. It does. Because once you begin to know these things and the parts of yourselves that are sometimes challenging, they're your sticky points. It's not always going to be easy for me to express my joy, but it's important for me to do it. It's important that I find a container and a funnel to channel my joy and my creativity. That's what Saturn is there for. It's important that I do things differently and I do things my way and I listen to that inner voice that is unique, right? So once you bring in that self-acceptance, you can then start embodying exactly who you've come here to be and reclaim your soul self. So I want to talk about the shadows a little bit more, because this is where you found me, Vika, with It's Karmic. And this is where the process starts. It starts in the shadows. I was on a spiritual path and I thought I was doing everything right. I was doing, you know, all the inner healing work. And yet I just couldn't get out of this loop. You know, some of my reoccurring themes was codependency in my relationships. And full disclosure, I'm just laying it all out on the table here. You know, my foundation in life was based on others showing up for me. My sense of security and comfort was based on how supportive and supported and loved I was by others. If they didn't show up for me in the way I needed, then emotionally I was just done. There was no stability. You know, my mental health suffered as a result. The dark nights of the soul, they were just excruciating. I experienced actually a lot of depression, a lot of suffering through my spiritual awakenings because I wasn't able to see the karmic placements I had. And they were unconsciously running a program for me, right? And so it created a lot of chaos for me. I knew beneath all of that, I had a deep sense of soul purpose. I just couldn't see the treasures yet. I didn't know what they were. And so in those shadows, when I looked at the karmic placements and I started to understand the patterns and I knew this was coming from previous lifetimes, I knew these fears were not from just this lifetime, they were from another place, from many, many lifetimes of suffering with these karmic wounds. I started to understand that, okay, where can I start to bring more awareness? So for you listening, the karmic signatures and placements, I would say is the moon, your south node, your IC, Pluto, Scorpio, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Chiron, and Lilith. These are the placements where the energies are so incredibly intense. They tell a story of your past life traumas, your deep soul wounds, your past life imprints. They tell a story of who you've always been and the way you've always done things and what you're carrying over into this lifetime, right? It's these placements that really do tell that story deeply. And I just want to preface by saying that once you know your karmic signatures and placements, it's not necessarily a permission slip into victimhood of, oh, okay, you know what? I have this really tough placement of a Scorpio moon conjuncting my Pluto. So that just means that, you know, my emotions are all over the place and you're just going to have to deal with it. That's just who I am. No, 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 no. That's the lower octave speaking there. That means that there is something there for self-mastery. There is something there that you need to be able to heal in order to elevate into that highest expression energy that we, you know, keep mentioning. So karmic placements are not really doom and gloom. There's a purpose to all of it. And as I've said, there is karmic treasure to be found there. This is where that gold is. So you've either had access to this energy signature many, many times over, or you already know the pain points, the pitfalls of being in that energy signature, but you just didn't quite master it yet. You haven't evolved into that yet. So again, how can you liberate yourself from being in that lower expression into that higher expression? So an example I can give you of that is my south node is in Libra. My north node is in Aries, and that is exactly the collective north node, south node energies we're in right now. So this is really speaking to me of my soul's purpose and also where I've been many, many lifetimes. So for me, my comfort zone has always been being the supporting character in somebody else's story. I've been the best wife or the best husband, the best spouse, the best sister, brother, mother, you name it. I've been that person that has always known how to help others and has always kind of stayed in the background. And as a result of that comfort zone, my lessons have been to master boundaries. You know, how can I have greater self-boundaries and use the word no and know that it's okay to say no to somebody else? To not be a people pleaser. Because, you know, Libra always wants harmony and peace and just to keep the peace all the time. But, you know, when you're in the lower octave of that, you'll do it as a consequence to your own happiness. You will shut away your own joy and your magic just to make sure somebody else is okay. And Aries is saying, no, not this time around. You are bringing that main character energy into your life. You are not the supporting character anymore. You're going to need to know what it is to lead, to step up, to blaze your own trail, to go a new way. And my South Node is in the 4th house. So this is all about really reclaiming something in my ancestry, in my lineage. The 4th house is that mother energy, that Cancer energy. I'm reclaiming something in my ancestry that probably many women in my lineage and ancestry have never done. And I can feel all of that energy coursing through my body because I'm reclaiming this for myself, but also for them. And it's a lot. It is a lot. This is big, big work. But if my soul agreed to this, if this is my soul assignment, I'm ready. It's a journey, it's a process, but I'm ready for it. So as I was saying, I do have a Scorpio moon, and I want to talk about that as an example of how to do the shadow work now. So let's take that first key way of soul reclamation, which is shadow work. So when I looked at my Scorpio moon, it was conjunct Pluto in the 4th house. This meant that for me, unconsciously, what was running on loop for me, the story that I have played over and over and over again from my past life traumas, is having my emotions run me. The Scorpio moon is deep. Those waters are dark and deep. You cannot see all the way to the bottom. You don't know what's in there, but it feels everything and it's intense. And it requires self-mastery. But if you don't know that, you are running on loop of lifetimes and lifetimes of becoming your emotions. And that's what I was doing. And that's why I needed so many other people to make me feel safe, because feeling my own stuff was not safe. The minute my emotions felt like they were getting too intense, my need for safety from outside of me went through the roof, right? And I didn't know that. So when I began to understand that not only is that the karmic signature Scorpio moon, but it was conjunct Pluto. Pluto is, it's Scorpio times 10 in its intensity and energy, not even times 10, times 100. It is the underbelly of the subconscious. It's where you've got the deepest core soul wounds, and it's all about transformation. It's that phoenix rising energy. It's death and rebirth, essentially. So you couple that with an intense Scorpio moon, you are continuously transforming. But if you're doing it unconsciously, you're becoming the darkness. You're becoming your emotions. And that is where depression can hit you. That is the abyss that you can fall into. You're becoming all of that rather than anchoring yourself in your wholeness and journeying through. Right? And I didn't know that. So when I began to shine a light on that, I think, Vika, when we were in Karmic, it's Karmic, and I was seeing all of this. I don't think I told you this, but as I started to accept the intensity of my Scorpio moon, I think I cried solid for 2 weeks. I gave myself that permission to just let it all out. Because, you know, there is this programming in society and in the collective that sharing your emotions or even feeling your emotions is bad. Crying means there's something wrong. You know, feeling your stuff means, oh my gosh, something's not quite right. What have you done? What's gone wrong? And it's not the case. You know, we have to feel it to release it. And it was like a massive permission slip was given to me to feel it all. And that's exactly what I started to do. So when I started to shine a light on that Scorpio moon, I was accepting those emotional depths. I was feeling it all. I was going deep. Yes, I'm here to be a sensitive soul. Yes, that's my superpower. You know, can I accept that this is just who I am? This is how I feel safe. You know, and nurturing that part of myself for myself. And as I began to do that, I understood that, okay, within this karmic placement, there is a wound. And Vika, feel free to jump in here because you know all about this. The wound with the Scorpio moon, the karmic wound, I should say, is the witch wound. And that's actually what attracted me to your work, because I knew that there was a part of me that understood what that witch wound was. You know, as women who are deeply connected to themselves, their emotional depths, their emotional intensities, we are connected to not just that, but the emotional intensities and depths within the world. There's a reason for that. There's something about us that is connected to universal energies. And that's really what the witch was. She was the divine, sacred feminine that was connected to universal energies, that knew the mysticism that existed in the world, that connected her to it all, to the cycles and rhythms of nature, to the cosmos, to the elements, to her own rhythms, her own cycles. That was the witch. And she had so much power being in that level of self-mastery that it was feared and ostracized and rejected. And when I started to work with you and move through karmic astrology, I began reclaiming this part of myself, which sat in my Scorpio moon. So there were those depths that I felt were so bad, and that sensitivity that was so bad. But underneath all of that was the inner witch that needed to be reclaimed. And the karmic pattern then connected, the karmic pattern of rejecting this part of myself, judging this part of myself, fearing this part of myself because of what's happened to me in past lifetimes. The lesson here was to accept my inner depths, to understand what transformation really is, and not to become it, but to allow it. So really, as I started to give myself that love, that compassion, to embrace all of it and move into that portion of self-acceptance, I began to uncover the treasure. And for me, that was opening myself up to my psychic abilities. I mean, they just came flooding through. My connection with the unseen and the hidden realms within nature. You know, I began channeling messages from the cosmos in a way where, you know, each planet and house and sign was a guide, a cosmic guide. You know, I began channeling messages in nature. It didn't even know I had these abilities, that I could do that. But this is what was underneath the sensitivity and the depths, right? So I began to reclaim this part of myself, my inner mystic, my inner medicine woman, my inner divine sacred feminine, which for me looks like tapping into that Shakti wisdom, that goddess power. And it's all in my fourth house of ancestry, lineage, reclaiming this for the women that have come before me and that will come after me. This is deep sacred work. And I had no idea. And this is the potent work of karmic astrology. And then that brings us to wholeness. As I started to reclaim this aspect of myself, I was now able to understand that this was me from the moment I was born. I was already it. I just didn't know. And through that process of just shining a light, you will be astounded when you understand that by just shining that light simply on that karmic placement, you are doing enough to bring yourself home. It's not as complicated as you may think. The inner work really is not as complicated as you may think. Sometimes that's all it takes, is your attention to something you've been ignoring, right? And so you'll start to see your external reality mirroring now this self-acceptance you've gained. You know, people in my life who usually were the quickest to criticize me if I was in my Scorpio moon magic were now asking me for advice. Can I have a reading with you? They would say. Or, you know, the people that I had the toughest soul contracts with, that I faced rejection and abandonment with, were coming to me and saying, you know, I really admire you for you stepping out in this unusual way and speaking up. You really helped me with that. And I never imagined that that would happen, but that's the power of this. You know, that really is the power of this work. And I think I said it earlier, this work is not linear. you'll see your karmic energy signatures and karmic placements showing themselves to you through the challenges and the difficulties you face in life, but it will become a little less sticky. The resistance won't be so hard, because as you do reclaim more of yourself and you do journey into more self-compassion and more self-acceptance, you'll just have that awareness of, okay, this is that really tough placement I have speaking to me now. What is the soul assignment? What is it asking me to do? How is it asking me to respond? And so this brings us into embodiment and integration, because this is sometimes the piece in inner healing work that we can miss, but this is so integral to you showing up in the world, right? And one of the things I learned through Karmic Astrology is we need to tend to our nervous systems when we're doing this work. Because let me tell you, when you're reprogramming the mind and you're coming into that heart space and you're anchoring yourself into the wholeness and you're remembering all of this stuff, it's a lot. The nervous system is going to remember, because that's what it does. It's going to remember the past, and it's going to bring up the same soul wound that you have experienced before and have you believe that you are experiencing it again in the now, and you're being burned at the stake when you try and step up in your magic, and you are not. That is not the case. And one of the things I learned was tending to my nervous system. And so what I found really interesting with Karmic Astrology is if you look at the karmic placement, so I'll take my moon, for example. If you look at the Scorpio energy, it's water, it's deep, it's intense, it's dark. But the equal and opposite energy is Taurus. That is on the axis, the opposite energy. So whenever I might be in those deep, dark waters of my Scorpio moon, journeying through the shadows, doing my inner healing work, I want to come back to my body, because that is what's going to help my nervous system. That is what's going to help me physically in this life as a human being to journey through this stuff. So Taurus speaks to being in the physical, being in the body, being in the heart space, coming back to that center within yourself. You know, it's very earthly. So for me, that looks like breath work. Literally using my breath as a tool to come back into my body. You know, I could be going through something really tough and I'll just drop into tapping immediately. I will just drop into breath work immediately. And that's just what I've got to do. No matter what's going on, who's around me, that's just what I've got to do to tap back in and to harmonize the energies. You know, because these placements are intense. They're karmic. You've suffered enough in many, many, many lifetimes. And if you're really going to be here to do this deeper inner healing work, you have to know how to get yourself back into center, to harmonize and to equalize the energies. So that was really key for me, is learning how to do that energetically and physically through the karmic placements and energies. And I would just end this with saying, of course, when you're going through this, you want the most compassion and self-care and patience with yourself. This isn't something you're going to heal all in one go. It's a process, you know, and having self-awareness is just, it's the key. And you can see here on this diagram, I've shown, you know, the soul self, which is, you know, the white egg, and you've got these bits and pieces of your soul that you're reclaiming. And just know that the more you're shining a light on these aspects that have been in the dark, the more you're alchemizing these parts that were unconscious to you and turning them into keys of wisdom for yourself. This is you becoming more of your golden self, you know, reclaiming these parts of your soul and stepping into who you came here to be. And my key learnings to just end this off with is, no matter what you think, you are already enough. I cannot say that and stress that more. You already are enough. And it's something I have to continuously remind myself. You are, you know, enough in the mess, enough in the chaos of change and transformation when you're going through your healing processes. This work is deep, it's beautiful, and it's enlightening. And although you're bringing pieces of yourself back home into your awareness, into your heart, in truth, I do believe we're just trying to remember that we are already golden. We are already whole. We're just doing the work to remember that. So healing really is a process of remembering. your soul self, in and amongst all of the chaos and transformation, the change. And that brings us to the end of the journey of soul reclamation. Thank you so, so much for joining this conversation and being here and listening.
Oh my goodness. I wrote down so many notes and it was just so potent. Tari, oh my God. Your magic is it's so juicy. Like, what do I say right now? Okay, there was so much magic in this. And what I loved was that your teachings, Brett is speechless too. Okay, so like, oh, we lost Tari. Oh no, there you are. Okay.
I'm here.
It looked like you got lost.
I just stopped sharing the screen, that's all.
You went away for a second. I was like, no, your internet gave up on us. So you didn't. Okay, good. Okay, Brett's speechless. I'm speechless. Okay. What I loved about this is the journey we've gone on over the first 3 days was very like into the depths. Yours went into the depths, but it also now is bringing us into the light and into this balance of what I loved you said. I had to write it down, was like that we get confused, I think, when we're talking about karma, past lives, in that, not even confused, but we think it is only about the bad stuff, right? We think we're only looking at the hard stuff, which we are definitely looking there to liberate, as you've shown us. But there is the treasure, as you mentioned, the gold, the magic. And that is one of my biggest things I'm trying to share. And I love because you found that inside of this. And now you're sharing that. And it's that ripple effect that it's not just that the stuff is bad or hard. It's like, that's where the gold is, the transmutation of that gold.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. And I also loved your quote, and I'm literally just going to like quote this as a Tari quote forever, is like, yeah, the subconscious mind is mirrored by the cosmos. Like you just put it so perfectly there, because if people, everyone here and everyone listening back on the replay can understand that, yes, the cosmos, both in your birth chart and what's happening right now, is a reflection of the unconscious, the subconscious, the superconscious, the all. It helps us understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Absolutely. There's a reason and a purpose to it all. We just haven't figured that out yet. And it's not our responsibility to figure it all out. But if you start to at least see the blueprint, it's going to make that process and that journey so much easier for you.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have one question that we're going to leave off on today, because you talked a lot about your moon, because that's such a potent place in your chart. But my question is, what would be your favorite placement for anyone to start with? It could be the moon, it could be anything else. Your favorite placement for anyone to start with, placement, sign, house, energy, whatever, that they could kind of look to start digging for the gold.
Oh, that's a good question. Start digging for the gold. I know Laura yesterday mentioned the South Node, and I did also think that that's a great place.
It might just be the theme of this whole talk is the South Node.
Well, because it's an area that you have already perfected. It really is. But if you're in the lower octave of that energy, you're stuck. And actually, it's a blind spot because you don't even know that you're good at it. It's second nature.
So true.
Right? It's just because it's such a comfort zone, you just kind of bypass it and you think, yeah, everyone can do that. But no, they can't. These are some of the things that make you, that because you've perfected it so many times before. And if you're in that lower octave, you're stuck there. But it doesn't mean that the treasures you brought in are worthless. Like, no, you need to take those treasures that you've mastered and build that bridge towards the North Node. You're not leaving the South Node and jumping into the North Node. No, you're building a bridge and you're finding a way to take the treasures with you along the journey. So that South Node in Libra right now is, how can you bring that understanding that you have with peace and harmony, and bringing that energy into spaces and places, whether it's your relationships, whether it's in the conversations you have with people, and taking it into starting something new in the world, bringing a little bit of that peace and harmony with you, to whatever it is you're going to be doing. You know people so well because you've mastered how to listen and how to fine tune, you know, being diplomatic and understanding yourself and others. But now you've got to start something new and do something for yourself that trailblazes with all of that. So I'd say there is a great place to start when it comes to the treasures that you come in with.
I love it. So it's like you're going to take this whole chat today and dive into those shadows, the nitty, the gritty, the uncomfortable, and then find the gold there. And that's been a big part of my own work with my Leo South Node, is not looking at it as, oh man, there's some heavy shit there, but like not looking at it as a burden. It's like, there's so much mastery there that now I need to transmute it into my North Node. So I want everyone even to take this and look at your South Node, and as Tari was just saying, look at the collective South Node in your chart too, right? To see 2 layers of uncovering that can happen right now of gold that we can sort of dig up. And I just wanted to note finally that I love that you brought the nervous system into it, because that nothing happens without it. Like I'm just going to flat out say, for everyone listening, if you do not do your nervous system work and get your body back into homeostasis, this work becomes and remains surface.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'll go back to what I said towards the beginning of this. I mentioned you have to accept what is. How can you accept what is if your body is in fight and flight? You cannot even get to that stage where you've created the space to even dive in to do the inner work.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And then whilst you're doing the inner work, you're uncovering so much. You're believing that the fears are happening now in real time. Yeah. So before, after, during, you need to tend to the nervous system. And yes, we're doing soul work here, but we're human beings. We've come into a physical body. We have to tend to it whilst we're going in. So yeah, it's very important.
It is. And I love that you brought that in, because I think that's the missing link for a lot of astrologers, honestly. And I don't say that with any judgment. I just say that with like, the work can go deeper than it is if we just start to embody the healing a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. Tari, my last question to you is, where can everyone find you? What is your handle on Instagram or any other places you want to have people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Instagram at I am the golden hour. And I will have my website launching in a couple of days, which I'm very excited about. All my services will be on there. But in the meantime, if anyone is interested in booking a reading with me or finding me or even just connecting, Instagram is the best way. So it's I am _ the golden hour.
Perfect. And I will link that in the email I send out for everyone, so you guys can follow Tari and her serious magic. Thank you so much for just showing up and sharing everything I already knew was going to come out, but in like a completely unexpected and like jaw-dropping way. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you.
And thank you guys for those of you who came live. And, you know, I can't wait to hear your thoughts. There is a space on YouTube, comments, questions, thoughts. Those of you watching the replay, drop it all in there and we will, you know, connect in with you. I'll share those comments and questions with Tari so she can see them coming through, and we can just, you know, stay in touch about this beautiful topic. Thank you guys so much. Have a beautiful day.